Hey everybody, Dirili here. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Hakuouki Demon of the Fleeting Blossom. And we're still on Hijikata's route. Hopefully this just might be his ending. I'm really not sure. I thought it might have been a long time ago. So I have no idea how long he's going to keep going. He's got some serious stamina apparently. But anyway, you can just sit back, relax, and let me read you a story. The following day, Hijikata received notice that Benton Fortress had come under concentrated bombardment. The Imperial Army had begun their attack. After hearing how dire the situation at Benton was, Hijikata immediately decided to send reinforcements to the fortress.
I'm leaving to support the men at Benton. Chizuru, you're coming, right?
Yes. He grinned. Since I'd never learned how to ride a horse, Hijikata had simply sent me behind him on his and set off for Benton Fortress. Oh, I would love to do that. We galloped through the town, moving at what seemed to me like an incredible pace, when suddenly the crack of a gunshot rang out, and something slammed into Hijikata's body. Ah! Hopefully it's not Silver. The horse, surprised by the gunshot, reared up and threw us to the ground. Ow! Now rid of its frightening burden, the horse bolted. I'd been fortunate enough to land in a bush, and so the greatest injury I'd sustained was a number of small scratches. Hijikata! I crawled across the ground toward his body, my own bruised and aching. The soil all around him was stained dark red. In my time with the Shinsengumi, I had seen many battlefields and a great deal of blood, but this... Terror gripped my heart. I could hear blood hammering in my ears. What was I going to do? Hijikata! I shook his body and almost cried out when he stirred. His wound was serious. A normal human would have died instantly, but his fury blood had kept him alive, if only barely. Please, say something! His eyes opened to thin slits.
Chizuru, are you alright?
Yes, I'm fine. He was nearly dead, and undoubtedly in excruciating pain, but even then his first thought had been my safety. You should be looking around too to make sure that whoever fired that shot isn't coming, and they probably are actually. I choked back a sob. This was not the time.
We're in trouble if they come back to finish the job. We need to get out of here and wait for this to heal.
He struggled to his feet and began to walk, blood dripping down the length of his body. Hijikata, stop! I ran over and hauled his arm around my shoulder. He leaned against it gratefully. After seeing us shot and thrown from the horse, the shooter undoubtedly assumed we were dead. They weren't likely to come back, but if we didn't move, we could still be found. You really think the shooter would have thought that they got both of us with one shot? I mean, getting thrown from a horse isn't exactly a guaranteed death. You're right. We need to leave, but please, let me help you walk. You're hurt. I gave him the bravest smile I could muster and shifted his arm to a better position across my shoulders. He smiled back. At first we headed for Goryokaku, but the Imperial Army had already laid siege to it. We could have been walking to our deaths. For the time being, we needed to hide ourselves, and for that we needed a place away from the enemy lines. To the rear of Goryokaku, we found it. Where is it? Oh, it's beautiful with cherry trees. A garden of cherry trees, the soft petals of their blossoms dancing in the wind. It felt almost unreal, as if we were stepping into another world. We rested at last beneath one of the trees, where the smell of flowers could help drive away the scent of blood. Hijikata's wounds were deep, and so far had shown no signs of healing. Perhaps his fury power was beginning to fade. Perhaps that meant his life would soon be at an end. Suddenly my mind was full of dreadful things, and I froze, paralyzed with dread.
You look good next to those cherry blossoms.
Oh. Huh? I blinked. Do you really think so? I never thought that myself, or anything even remotely like it. I've always thought they really suited you, though. Hijikata looked right at home in the middle of a storm of cherry blossoms. Each fallen petal was strikingly beautiful, in defiance of the tragic end they would surely face. There was a strange sort of heroism to the cherry blossom, I thought, to shine so brightly in defiance of fate. Hijikata, with his unshakable devotion to the samurai way, shone as brightly and beautifully as any cherry blossom. Oh, for some reason, that thought calmed me. The worries that had crowded my mind began to fade, and I felt myself beginning to think that perhaps things would work out after all. The sight of the cherry blossoms and the sound of Hijikata's calm, gentle voice raised my spirits back up. We would survive. Hijikata and I would make it through this war, side by side. This was not the time to lose hope. When I turned to look at him, I saw that there was a tender smile on his face, almost as if he could see my thoughts. Hijikata, when spring came next year, I wanted to be here with him to watch the cherry blossoms fall. I wanted to be with him when every spring came. The words were waiting, ready on my tongue, when a great gust sprang up, throwing the wildly tumbling petals high into the air. They drifted slowly, almost lazily back down to the ground, and then suddenly... What the hell? You're ruining our moment, Kazuma. He was there.
So, you were alive.
His eyes fell on Hijikata, and his mouth curled up into a smile. Why? My voice broke, but Kazuma only laughed.
I'm here to put an end to all of this. This man is an affront to my honor, and must be destroyed.
That day at Utsunomiya Castle, Kazuma had warned us that he would return, but I never thought that he would forsake his clan and travel all the way to Ezo just to fight Hijikata.
I'm surprised to see you made it here, to the north. Impressive for a fake.
That was a little surprising. His tone was as derisive as usual, but his words were almost compliments, backhanded to be sure, but praise of a sort nonetheless. In some way, he recognized what Hijikata had been through.
Didn't think you'd come all the way to Ezo. If I'd bought it already, you would have wasted your time.
His face twisted into a crooked grin. No, you can't! Hijikata is hurt! A duel now would be meaningless. If he fought in his condition, he'd surely die. I stepped in front of Hijikata, between him and Kazuma, but he reached out an arm to stop me.
Chizuru, stay out of this.
But... A gentle glance from Hijikata silenced me before I could finish.
If he's ready to give up everything he's got to fight me, how could I call myself a samurai if I turn tail?
That's... Kazuma had left behind his clan, his life, just for the sake of defending his honor. Hijikata and Kazuma were different men in almost every way, but perhaps they shared a warrior's pride.
I'm fighting for what I believe in, and I'll win no matter what, because I'm going to live.
I saw the determination in his eyes and knew that there was no point in arguing with him. I'd seen that look plenty of times before, and it meant his mind was made up. Even if I could convince him to run, then everything he'd stood for and lived for would be destroyed. No, I couldn't do that. Fine, I'll just watch.
Sorry, Chizuru.
I shook my head. Don't apologize. I believe in you. Kazuma let out a snort of laughter.
You want to live, huh? Furies are only imitations. The more you use those powers of yours, the shorter your life gets. How can a human beast that thirsts only for blood possibly compare to a full-blooded demon?
He caught a falling petal and stroked idly at it with one finger.
You're destined to simply wither and die. How could this end any other way? You throw your life away so easily, just like these cherry blossoms.
My heart skipped a beat. Beautiful as the blossoms were, death and decay claimed them all too quickly. Would death soon be here to claim Hijikata as well?
I'm not throwing my life away.
His voice was calm.
There were just lots of things I had to protect. The life of a samurai is not an easy one.
There was a hint of a smile playing about his lips. Kazuma looked carefully at Hijikata for several moments before he finally spoke.
Perhaps the name of a fury no longer suits you. The life you strive to live is not that of a fake.
There was no hint of contempt left in his words.
You are a demon. I rescind all the times I called you false.
There was the slightest smile on Kazuma's face, but this was no sneer of contempt. It was a smile of satisfaction, of excitement. Kazuma looks really beautiful in front of those cherry blossoms, too. Perhaps Kazuma, just like the rest of us, I last understood just what sort of man Hijikata was. My respect for Hijikata drove me to help him in whatever way I could, but Kazuma's would manifest in a different way, the exchange of swords.
If you're now a demon, then you must have a demon's name. I name you.
Okay, how long is the rustling of wind going to go on?
Hakuouki.
And now you know where the name of the game from. Well, they translated it for the game title to Demon of the Fleeting Blossom, but basically it's a reference to the cherry blossoms, how they die so quickly. More literally, it translates to Demon of the Wilting Blossom or something like that. Like a wilting blossom demon. It seemed almost as if the name had been chosen long, long ago, so perfectly did it fit him. Perhaps I thought this was destiny.
Thanks, I guess. But I'm not doing this so you'll call me a demon, you know.
His mouth quirked up in a smile as he slid his sword from its sheath. With a sigh, his body shivered and suddenly his hair was white.
Can't play long, though. That a problem? Not at all. I'll kill you with the first blow.
Bold words. Kazuma nodded, his own sword sliding from its scabbard. I could not interfere, but I didn't need to. I believed Hijikata would win. The battle would be decided in a single moment of their first attack. The skill of each was so great that even the smallest mistake would mean death. Would luck decide their match? Ability? Emotion? They stood apart from one another, still as statues. A wind blew up, casting scores of petals into the air between the two combatants. In that instant, they both leapt forward. For a brief moment, their swords met. There was no give and take to this encounter, no block and parry. Everything that each man had went into that first deciding blow. Kazuma's sword passed within a hairbreadth of Hijikata. I know, it's Hijikata's route, but I still love Kazuma. But Hijikata's blade found its mark, burying itself deep in the demon's heart.
There's still something I got to protect. I can't lose, not even to a demon.
Hijikata's voice was quiet and strong. Even in the very act of taking another man's life, his eyes were strangely gentle.
If I can die on the blade of a samurai such as you.
Even with his heart skewered by Hijikata's blade, he could still talk. He put on a brave smile as he spoke.
Then I have no regrets. I have lived my life with honor, and I die with the same.
His eyes were clear and free of hostility. If anything, he seemed at peace. To die in a duel against a foe he respected was a death he could accept with grace.
Hakuouki, now you must live out what life you have left.
They were his last words. Hijikata drew a sword out of Kazuma's body as it fell and dropped the still bloody sword back into its scabbard. As the blade slid home, Hijikata's body returned to its human form.
Yeah, I will.
Then his body wavered, and he fell to his knees. Hijikata! I ran to his side. He had never compromised his principles, and now his rival was finally defeated. But he had pushed his body to its limit. His strength was gone. Hijikata's long battle was finally coming to a close. Tears began to well up in my eyes. I looked up toward the sky to keep them from spilling out, and watched as the blossoms of the cherry trees danced across the heavens. Don't die now, Hijikata! Final chapter. Hijikata didn't reach Benton Fortress. Even with the reinforcements Hijikata had sent, the fortress couldn't hold against the Imperial Army and surrendered. Eventually they took Hakodate as well, and the army of the Republic of Ezo was forced to surrender. Just as spring came to Ezo, the war the Shinsengumi had fought for so long came to an end. Better to live and see the future than die and be denied it, just the sort of thing I expected from Otori. The Imperial Army had recognized Enomoto's skill and spared his life, sending him to prison instead of the executioner. If they recognized his skill, then why didn't they use him instead? Somehow, Shimada had survived the final fierce battle and escaped unscathed. Wow, so in the end, he was the one that lived the longest? Although, we don't really know when Agakura and Harada died as far as the game goes. When I'd asked what he intended to do, he laughed and said he'd probably open a school of swordsmanship in Kyoto. Every time I see cherry blossoms, I remember what had happened in Eizo. How many lives were lost, and how many patriots have fought and died for what they believed in. Too many. But perhaps most of all, I remember the time I spent with Hijikata. They're so beautiful. Pirouetting and dancing on each breeze of wind, the cherry petals brushed against my skin like silk, each one bringing a tiny whiff of the smell of new life. Whenever I see the colors of spring, I remember that wonderful time. The time you spent by my side.
You really like cherry blossoms that much?
He looked at me, his mouth twisted into a small grin. Yeah. I probably looked rather silly, but I didn't feel embarrassed by it anymore. I like them because they remind me of you. He looked at me in serene contemplation for a moment, then let his grin spread across his face into a smile.
Well, I like them too. They remind me of you.
His voice, soft and quiet, throws my mind into chaos. I can feel my face flush. When he speaks to me like that, there's no hiding my feelings. I doubt I'll ever grow used to his voice. The very sound of it sets my heart to beating.
I've been worried about the end coming lately.
Suddenly his tone was serious.
I never got bored when I'm with you. Sometimes I wish I could live forever.
Oh. It was a wish that I secretly shared. As a fury, Hijikata had spent his future in exchange for power in the present. How much he had spent we couldn't know. His life could end tomorrow. Oh, why can't we learn about the waters in my hometown? If he could live forever, then that fear of the unknown would disappear. But I knew that could never be.
It'd probably be an easy way to go. Just accept that I'm used up and wither away.
His voice was still calm and gentle, but his gaze had drifted somewhere far away.
But I don't want that. I'll fight to stay alive as long as I can.
For me! As he finished, his eyes turned to me and his mouth curled up into a warm smile. I don't want us to be apart. I would stay and fight with him until the end was at least upon us, so that I could look death in the eye and say we'd made the most of what we had. I want to stay with you as long as I can. His smile twitched with a momentary smirk.
You cry too easy. I'd feel pretty bad if I left you behind.
Oh. He was right. Without even my noticing, tears began to roll down my cheeks. I blinked in surprise, but that hardly helped. Just when I thought I'd learned to put on a brave face for him. Sorry, Hijikata. I didn't mean to make you worry. He grinned.
You're mine, right?
Hijikata. His words were short and to the point, but his voice was full of tenderness.
If you're mine,
he continued,
then that means I'm responsible for you. I'm here to look out for you. I worry about you because I want to, so don't be blaming yourself. And that's why it's also my duty to wipe your tears. You'll never have to cry alone.
Then, I looked up at him and smiled. You're mine too, right? All mine, every wonderful part of him. Then I'm responsible for you too. If you cry, I'll wipe your tears. He laughed.
There's no beating you, is there?
Surrounded by cherry blossoms, we sat as the springtime returned to the north. Next year and the year after that, I wanted to watch spring unfold with him. I wanted more happy memories like this one, and I wanted the day that we would be separated to never come. We need that water from my homeland, damn it! Well, that was Hijikata's good ending, and according to this guide, now we have all the CG pictures in this gallery, which I will check out after the credits quit playing. But yeah, there's another way we can go about getting that same ending, which has a lower level of corruption, or higher level of corruption? I don't know, the guide's a little confusing, but there's nothing new to be gained from it. So there's not really any point in me going through it. But I'll put a link in the description in case anybody is wanting some kind of completion thing about this. It's just about making a couple different choices along the way from that last save that I had made before. Anything else, there's no more text to be read, there's no more CGs to be seen, so not really any point in making another video about it. Although I had watched the Hakuouki anime before I had played the game, long before I played the game. Actually, I didn't even know there was a game until after I had watched the anime. But, yeah, I loved everybody in this game, except for Heisuke. And Heisuke is like most people's favorite. I guess because there's a lot of young people who like these games, so I guess he resonates with the younger crowd more. But me, I kept trying to pick a favorite, and I don't really have one. It's like I love everybody so much except for Heisuke. I don't know, I guess it's kind of between Harada and Saito. Let me get to the gallery while I'm talking. Alright, so here's Hijikata's very sexy cherry blossom picture. And here's Harada's cherry blossom picture, which I don't think I had recorded before. Did I get everybody else's? And here's the last picture that we had not seen. And I don't know why Hijikata's so freaked out. Oh, it's the poetry. Ah, yes, okay. Okita's reading Hijikata's bad poetry. That's why he's all desperate to get it back there. But that's our extra image for completing everything in the game. But yeah, I think the softest spots in my heart are probably reserved for Saito because he's that stoic guy and he, I don't know, just the strong silent types really get me. The really duty-bound ones. I mean, although I like them more physically passionate. I like their physical passion to come out with that stoicism, but I know that's not often always the case with the Japanese samurai in those days. But I also really liked Harada a lot because he was just so sweet and caring, and he just was very preemptive with his thinking and just knowing what was on your mind. He was very perceptive about what was going on with people. And he was very sweet, and he was the only guy in the game that actually got some, I think, wasn't he? Which was kind of a plus in my mind. So yeah, for now we are done with Hakuouki. However, I may have a little something extra for you guys soon. I have to see if I can get something from my sister in order to be able to do it though. So I will let you know, well, you'll see the video when it comes up, if it's possible or not. Hope to see you there or in some of my other videos. I do plan to be starting Sweet Fuse next. Yeah, so hope to see you there in either one of those or in some of the other titles that I've read in the past. And I'd be so grateful for any likes, comments, subscriptions, or shares with your friends to show some support. Thank you so much for joining me, and I wish you all health, happiness, and safety. Dirili signing out. Bye-bye, everybody.